5 credits for her? Not even worth scrap. The alien market was loud and full of smoke. Traders shouted prices, machines beeped, and the smell of oil and dust filled the air. On one side of the market, behind rusted metal bars, sat a thin alien woman. Her skin was a soft silver blue and her dark eyes stared down at the ground. Her name was Zuri. She did not move. She did not speak. She was tired, cold, dirty. Her hands were chained, though there was no need. Zuri had no strength left to run. A trader stood outside her cage, waving his arms. 5 credits, he shouted to the crowd. Only 5 credits for this one, a rare female from the Zellari race. People stopped. They looked at her. Then they laughed. 5? She's not worth 1 credit. She looks broken. Probably can't even speak anymore. The trader forced a smile. Come now, you won't find a price like this again. But no one came. Closer. They just walked away, still laughing. Zuri closed her eyes. The chains on her wrist felt heavier than ever. Her last owner had left her here 2 days ago. Useless, he said. Doesn't follow orders. Then he spit on her and walked away. She hadn't eaten since. The trader gave her water, nothing more. Why bother feeding her? She was just trash now. Suddenly a voice spoke, calm and soft, different from the others. I'll take her. The trader blinked. What did you say? The voice repeated, louder now. I said I'll take her. The crowd turned. A human man stood there. His clothes were dusty and he carried no weapons. His face was sunburnt and tired, but his eyes were sharp. You want her? The trader asked, surprised. Yes. The trader laughed nervously. Well, all right. 5 credits, and she's yours. The man pulled out a small metal chip and handed it over. You're serious? Someone in the crowd said. Why would a human want that thing? Must be lonely out there. Another joked. The human ignored them. He stepped closer to the cage. The trader unlocked the door and dropped Zuri's chains with a loud clink. She's yours now, he said with a grin. Don't come crying when she breaks. Zuri didn't move. She stared at the man with tired, empty eyes. He looked at her gently. Can you walk? He asked. Zuri didn't answer. He held out his hand. Slowly, unsure, she reached out and took it. Her fingers were cold. Her steps were weak. But she followed him. The crowd watched in silence as the human and the alien woman disappeared into the dusty streets of the market. They walked for hours, through the edge of the colony, past the metal junkyards and old solar farms. Zuri stayed quiet the whole time. Her feet bled, her legs shook, but still she walked. The man didn't speak much either. When they finally reached a small outpost far from the city, he opened a metal door. Inside was a small room, simple but clean. A table, a chair, a bed. Zuri froze at the door. This is yours, the man said. She looked at him with confusion. She thought it was a trick. Was he another master? Another cruel owner? You can rest, he said softly. No chains here. Zuri stepped inside slowly. The air was warm. The bed was soft. She turned to look at the man again. Why? She whispered, her voice dry and cracked. Why what? Why did you buy me? He was silent for a moment. Then he said, because no one else would. Zuri stared at him. Her eyes began to fill with tears, but she wiped them away quickly. She sat on the edge of the bed. Her hands trembled. You're safe now, the man said. Sleep. He turned off the light and walked out. Zuri sat in the dark, her heart beating fast. Was this a dream or a trap? But the room stayed quiet. No shouts, no orders, no pain, just silence. And for the first time in many, many days, Zuri closed her eyes and slept. You're free now, but where will you go? The first light of dawn crept through the small window of the outpost. A faint breeze moved the curtain as dust danced in the air. Zuri opened her eyes slowly. For a moment she forgot where she was. There were no bars, no cold metal floor, No guards shouting, just warmth, a real blanket, a soft pillow. Quiet. She sat up quickly. Her heart raced. This had to be a mistake, but no one came to yell. No chains wrapped around her wrists. No collar choked her throat. Her eyes moved to the door. It was slightly open. She stepped off the bed. Her feet were still sore, but the pain no longer controlled her. Her fingers brushed over a clean cloth placed on the chair beside her. A simple gesture, but to Zuri it felt like magic. She moved to the window and looked out. The land was dry and open. Small plants clung to the dirt. The sky stretched far, a deep orange blue. She had never seen so much freedom. It scared her. A quiet sound made her turn. The human, David, stood in the doorway holding a cup. He didn't speak right away, just walked to the table and placed the cup down. "Water," he said simply. Zuri looked at him, then at the cup. She walked to it and picked it up. Her fingers were shaking. He sat in the chair. "You can stay here, rest as long as you like." Zuri narrowed her eyes. "Why do you say that?" Her voice was rough but firm. David leaned back. "Because it's true." She didn't trust it. Nothing in her life had ever been free. Not since the war that took her home. Not since the slavers broke her future. "You bought me," she said. "I paid to get you out of that cage," he replied. "Same thing." David looked at her. "No, it's not." Silence filled the room. Zuri looked around again. The place was small, dusty, even poor, but it was clean, safe. He could have left her locked away. Instead, he gave her a bed. And now, a choice. That was the part she didn't understand. "Are you a soldier?" she asked. "No." "A traitor?" "No." "Then what are you?" David smiled faintly. "I fix broken machines, old ships, cargo, drones, fuel lines. Out here I work alone. No one bothers me." Zuri stared at him. "So why take me in?" He was quiet for a long moment. Finally he said, "I knew someone once. She was like you, taken, sold. I never got to save her." Zuri felt her chest tighten. She looked away. David stood and walked to the door. "There's food on the counter. Eat if you want. I'll be outside." And then he left. Zuri sat down slowly. Her hands touched the table, the chair, the cup. Everything real. She stood and walked to the shelf where he had pointed. There was bread, simple, hard, but food. Not slop, not thrown at her, not eaten while chained. She took a piece and chewed slowly. She didn't know what to feel. Outside, David worked, on a broken water pump. The sun was hot, the sand dry under his boots. He didn't look back at the window, though he could feel her watching. She didn't know it yet, but he had seen the faint marks behind her ear, the ones that meant she once belonged to the Zilari Palace Guard. That meant she wasn't just anyone. She had a story. But he wouldn't ask her yet. That night, Zuri stood near the window again. She hadn't run. She hadn't hidden. Something about this human made her stay. Still, fear crept inside her. She opened the door and stepped outside. The stars above were endless, cold, distant, yet peaceful. David was sitting beside a small fire, staring into the flames. She walked over. He didn't move, just waited. "I can't stay," she said. "Why not?" "If they find me, they won't. I'm not just a slave. I was a guard, a protector. I failed." David nodded. "And now?" Zuri looked up at the stars. "I don't know who I am anymore." David tossed a small log into the fire. Sparks rose. "Then maybe," he said, "this is where you start finding out." Zuri didn't answer. She just sat beside him, not as a slave, not as a soldier, just as herself. "Why did you come after me?" The sun dipped low behind the hills. The winds grew colder, sharper. Zuri stood just beyond the outpost's edge, her eyes on the horizon. She didn't belong here. She couldn't rest while danger followed her shadow. She didn't trust kindness. She didn't trust humans. And she definitely didn't trust herself. David had said she was free, but freedom felt like an open sky with no wings. Terrifying. So she walked. No bag, no food, no weapon, just silence. And wind. The land beyond the colony was rough and cracked. Strange trees bent in the wind like wounded animals. Sharp rocks pierced the sand. The night came fast. Zuri kept walking, thinking she could disappear into the wild and become no one. But the wild had other plans. A sudden growl echoed from a nearby ridge. She stopped. Another growl came. Lower. Closer. She turned and saw it. A desert stalker, 2 meters tall, all muscle and bone. Its mouth was filled with yellow teeth and its eyes glowed red in the dark. Zuri backed away, reaching for a weapon she didn't have. The beast stepped forward. Then another joined it. A pack. Her breath caught. Her legs ran. But she didn't get far. Her foot caught a root. She hit the ground hard. The beasts closed in. Zuri braced herself. This was it. She had escaped chains, only to be eaten alive. A sudden blast echoed through the night. Boom. One of the beasts screamed and rolled across the rocks. The others froze. A second shot hit the ground beside the pack, scattering them. Then, footsteps. A figure appeared between the trees, panting hard. It was David. He held a broken old plasma rifle and one side of his arm was bleeding. "Get up," he shouted, eyes locked on her. Zuri scrambled to her feet. The beasts snarled. They weren't finished. David pulled her behind a rock. "Stay low." Zuri was stunned. "You followed me? I saw your footprints. Didn't think you'd get far." She was shaking. "Why did you come after me?" Another growl. David fired again. "Ask me later." The last beast leapt over the rock. Its claws stretched forward. David shoved Zuri aside and took the hit. The beast bit deep into his shoulder. Zuri screamed. Something inside her snapped. She grabbed a sharp rock and leapt on the creature's back. She drove the rock into its eye, again and again. The creature screeched and dropped David. Zuri kept hitting. She didn't stop until the beast stopped moving. Her hands were covered in blood, her breath was wild, her eyes wide. David groaned, sitting up. "You okay?" he said. She nodded. "You saved me," he added. Zuri stared at him. "You followed me into the wild with a broken gun, bleeding. Why?" David smiled, though weakly. "Because no one should die alone out here." They sat beside each other in the quiet, broken forest, waiting for the beasts to leave. Zuri tore strips from her clothes and tied his wound with care. She didn't speak. Neither did he. But something between them had changed. Not just survival. Trust. She helped him stand. Together they walked back. Slow, bruised but not broken. Hours later, back at the outpost, David lay in bed groaning softly. Zuri cleaned his wound again. Her hands were gentler now. "You're an idiot," she whispered. He grinned. "Yeah, but I'm a helpful one." She smiled. It was small, but it was real. For the first time, Zuri wasn't thinking of escape. She was thinking of staying. She's just a slave. Hand her over. Morning came heavy and cold. Inside the outpost, Zuri stirred water in a pot over the fire. David rested nearby, his shoulder wrapped in fresh cloth, his face pale but calm. The fire crackled softly between them. Zuri wasn't used to this. Stillness. Every moment in her old life had been pain or fear. Now, she was watching water boil and thinking. But peace doesn't last long in a galaxy ruled by greed. The knock on the door was not gentle. Bang, bang, bang. Zuri jumped to her feet. Her hands moved toward the knife on the table. David slowly sat up, wincing. "Stay inside," he said. Another bang followed, louder now. Then came a voice, cold, commanding. This is the Colonial Enforcer Patrol. Open the door, human. Zuri's breath caught. They found her. David opened the door. 3 armored soldiers stood outside. Their suits were black and silver, their faces hidden behind mirrored helmets. Behind them hovered a small drone, recording everything. "We're looking for a fugitive," the lead soldier said. "Female. Zalari race. Escaped property of the Trade Guild." David didn't blink. "I haven't seen anyone like that." The soldier stepped forward. "You were seen buying a Zalari woman in the city 5 days ago, don't lie." Zuri peeked from behind the wall. Her heart pounded. "We want her," the soldier continued. "She belongs to the guild." David stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "She doesn't belong to anyone." The soldier laughed behind his helmet. "Don't act brave, mechanic. You paid 5 credits. That makes her scrap. She's not worth a war." David's jaw tightened. "She's worth more than any of you." The soldier raised a hand. "Last warning. Give her up, or we take her, and burn your place down too." Inside, Zuri shook. She had heard this tone before. It always ended the same way. Blood and fire. She looked around. No chains, no collars, just a choice. She couldn't let him protect her again. Not after the wilds, not after the pain in his shoulder, not again. Zuri stepped out. The soldiers turned. "There she is," one of them said. "Kneel." Zuri didn't move. I said, "I am not yours." The soldier raised his weapon. "You will be, if you live long enough." David reached for his old plasma rifle, but Zuri raised her hand. "Don't." She stepped forward, and slowly, she pulled back her long silver hair. Underneath, on the side of her neck, was a mark. Faint, almost faded, but still glowing softly. The soldiers froze. "Is that?" one of them whispered. "A royal mark. Zalari, Royal Guard. Blood sworn to protect the High Throne." Which meant Zuri wasn't just an escaped slave. She was a royal guardian betrayed and sold by someone powerful. Now things were different. "Scan it," the commander ordered. The drone beeped and confirmed it. Zuri narrowed her eyes. "You know what that mark means, don't you?" The commander lowered his weapon, suddenly unsure. "You arrest me," she said slowly, "and your names will be known across every planet. You'll be the fools who tried to enslave a Zalari royal protector." David stood behind her, watching, silent but proud. The commander hissed. "Then why hide?" "Because I was tired of being hunted," she replied, "but not anymore." The commander signaled the others. "Fall back." "But sir," I said, "fall back." The soldiers hesitated, then turned. In moments, they were gone, vanished into the desert dust. Zuri's knees almost gave out. David caught her. "You didn't have to." "I did," she whispered. "You followed me into the wild. I can stand for you at the door." They looked at each other, breathing hard. No more hiding. No more running. Zuri was no longer just someone bought for 5 credits. She was becoming someone who would fight for her own life and for the man who believed she was worth saving. "You were royal. Why were you sold?" The fire crackled low that night. Zuri sat outside the outpost, her arms wrapped around her knees, eyes fixed on the sky. The stars above were quiet, but inside her heart, a storm refused to calm. Behind her, David finished fixing a broken solar panel, one hand still wrapped in bandages. He had said nothing since the soldiers left. He didn't need to. They were both waiting for the truth. Finally, she spoke. "You were right." David looked over. "About what?" "I was someone important." She stood slowly and turned toward him. Her voice trembled, but her eyes did not. "I was born in the Tower City of Zalar Prime. My father was the chief guardian of the High Queen. I trained from the time I could walk. I wore the mark of protection by age 12. David listened quietly. He didn't interrupt. "I wasn't supposed to feel anything," Zuri continued. "No love, no fear, only duty. But I loved my sister. She was the Queen's daughter, not by blood, but by heart. She trusted me. A pause. She trusted me, Zuri said again, softer. David stepped closer. What happened? Zuri looked down. There was an attack. The Queen was killed. We were surrounded by betrayal. Someone inside, someone high up, sold us both out. They wanted the line ended. I fought, but I failed. My sister was taken. And you? David asked. Zuri clenched her fists. They branded me a traitor, said I let it happen. I was cast out, sold off-world. My voice was removed from the royal registry, as if I never existed. David sat beside her on the sand. The fire lit her face with a soft orange glow. You didn't fail her, he said. I did, Zuri whispered. I was her shield, and I broke. David looked toward the horizon. Maybe you were broken, he said, but now you're healing. She met his eyes. I thought if I kept running, the pain would shrink. But it didn't. It only followed. That's what pain does, David said. Until we stop and face it. Zuri looked up at the stars. I don't know who I am now. I'm not a guardian, I'm not a slave, I'm not royal. You're Zuri, he said simply. And maybe that's enough. For a moment, the silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. But peace doesn't come without cost. A sudden ping came from David's old radio. He stood up, checked the signal. His face went pale. What is it? Zuri asked. He turned to her slowly. Someone sent a beacon from orbit, coded in Royal Zalari script. Zuri froze. That language is restricted, only highborns know it. David nodded. And it's asking one thing. Is Zuri alive? Her breath caught. Then, she might be alive. My sister. David looked at her. If she's alive, she's calling for you. Zuri's hands trembled. For years she believed she had no one left. Now the past she tried to bury was reaching for her again, and this time she would have to answer. The new queen is coming for you. The sky was no longer quiet. A strange hum echoed above the dry hills. Zuri looked up and saw it, a dark shape cutting through the clouds, a sleek alien vessel, black and smooth like a blade, descending silently. Over the desert, David stepped out of the workshop, wiping his hands with a rag. One glance at the ship and his heart dropped. That's not local, he said. Zuri's eyes didn't blink. That's royal tech. The ship hovered, then disappeared, behind the cliffs beyond the outpost. No weapons fired, no announcement. But Zuri knew. She's here, David frowned. Who? Zuri turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. The one who took my sister's place. Inside the outpost, the radio buzzed again, this time with a clear message, a female voice, cold and regal. Zalar exile. Zuri, you have been located. You will surrender yourself by dusk. No harm will come to your human companion if you obey. David shut off the signal. That doesn't sound peaceful. It's not, Zuri said. That's the voice of Queen Nerea. David raised an eyebrow. I thought your sister, she was never crowned. Nerea took the throne after we disappeared. She was always next in line, always watching us from behind silk veils and fake smiles. So she's the one who betrayed you? Zuri nodded. She wanted the throne, and she used the war to get it. David grabbed his old rifle and checked the charge. Then we're not handing you over. Zuri shook her head. No, this isn't your fight. David looked her dead in the eyes. You think I fixed your wounds, built you a bed, and followed you into the wild just to stand aside now? Zuri stared at him, then gave a weak smile. You're impossible. That evening they prepared. David set traps around the hills, old mining charges wired into dirt mounds. Zuri sharpened blades she hadn't touched in years. Her fingers remembered the motions. Muscle memory returned like an old ghost. She tied her silver hair back and painted her neck with ash. Not for beauty, for war. This time she wasn't running. At nightfall, the queen's guards came. Not soldiers, hunters, silent, cloaked, moving like shadows with curved blades and toxin darts. One stepped on a mine. A thunderous boom shook the cliffs. Then, the fight began. Zuri and David moved together like a single thought. She struck from the shadows, he covered her with fire. 2 against 6. Outnumbered. Outmatched, but not outwilled. Zuri spun, kicked, slashed. Her eyes glowed with fury. She wasn't just fighting to survive, she was fighting for everything they had taken from her. David took a blade to the arm but didn't fall. He pressed on, blood dripping, heart roaring. When the dust cleared, 5 hunters lay still. One crawled back to the cliff, whispering into his communicator. "She's alive. The real heir." Zuri stood above him. "Tell her I'm not coming." To bow. The hunter's eyes widened. "Tell her," Zuri continued, "that if she wants me, she'll have to burn this place to the ground herself." Then she stepped back and let the message go. Later that night, David patched his arm by the fire. Zuri sat across from him, breathing hard. "She'll come now," she said. David nodded. "Let her." Zuri looked into the fire, voice soft. "She took everything from me. My name, my sister, my people." She looked up at him. "But she can't take this." David raised a brow. "This?" Zuri smiled. "This small fire. This broken man. This desert. This second chance." Outside in the hills, another ship roared across the sky. The queen was coming, and this time, Zuri wouldn't kneel. She was worthless to them, but everything to him. The ground trembled, not from wind, not from thunder, from something heavier, the queen's arrival. A warship descended over the cliffs like a god lowering its sword. Lights from its underbelly swept across the desert. Engines hummed like a heartbeat too large for the land. Beneath it, soldiers in silver-black armor marched into position. At the center of it all, she stood. Queen Nerea, tall, beautiful, hollow. Her long crimson robe floated behind her as she stepped onto the sands. Eyes glowing, chin lifted. The false Queen Zuri stood on the hilltop, alone but unshaken. Behind her, David waited near the outpost gate, his injured arm in a sling, a rifle in his good hand. The queen raised her voice, echoing across the valley. "You should have stayed forgotten, Zuri." Zuri stepped forward, her hair tied back in braids of ash and silver. Her voice was steady, quiet, but sharper than any blade. "And you should have remembered whose name you stole." Nerea's smile faded. "This doesn't have to end in fire." "It already did," Zuri replied. "The night you sold your own blood." A ripple moved through the queen's soldiers. "She's alive, isn't she?" Zuri shouted. "My sister." Silence. "Where is she?" Nerea stepped closer, her voice lost all kindness. "You lost the right to ask." The moment shattered. A single laser shot rang out from behind the rocks, David's warning shot. The queen's guards lunged forward. Zuri ran straight into them. She didn't hesitate. Not this time, spinning, sliding, striking. Her body moved, like a dance of fury and memory. She ducked under blades, disarmed one, used his own weapon to bring down another. David fired from the cliffs, covering her, hitting targets with deadly focus. One of the guards got too close. David struck him with the butt of his rifle, even as blood dripped from his sling. Zuri reached the queen. The guards fell away. Only Nerea remained. The two stood face to face. 2 bloodlines. One truth. "You always hated that I was chosen," Zuri said, her breath sharp. "You were never chosen," Nerea hissed. "You were lucky, nothing more." "No," Zuri whispered. "I was loyal." And with that, she lifted her blade. Nerea swung first, too fast, too proud. Zuri dodged and knocked her to the ground. "I don't want your throne," Zuri said. "I just want my sister." Nerea on her knees trembled. "Then go find her," she spat. Moments later, the queen's guards laid down their weapons. The mark on Zuri's neck glowed once more under the rising sun, not just a symbol of rank, symbol of survival. 3 days passed. The royal ship lifted off. Inside, David leaned against a wall, his sling finally removed. Zuri stood near the edge of the observation deck, watching the stars outside the window. "I found her," she said softly. David stepped closer. "Your sister?" Zuri nodded. "She was hidden on a moon colony, kept alive, kept safe. Does she remember you?" Zuri smiled. "She asked if I was real." David chuckled. "You do have that effect." They stood in silence for a while, gazing at the stars. Finally, Zuri turned to him. "They called me worthless. They sold me for 5 credits." David looked at her. "And?" Zuri reached out, gently touched his hand. "But you looked at me like I was worth the whole galaxy."